Welcome to our annual career panel discussing career paths in STEM. We've been doing this for many years, and it's always a really exciting event for our REU students and gives great information to everybody about what you can do with education that is in physics, astronomy, or adjacent fields. My name is Aaron Geller. I'm a research faculty member in the CIERA Astrophysics Center here at Northwestern University. I'm also the director and the PI of our REU program. It's funded by the NSF. And we started this career panel, as I said, many years ago. And part of the motivation was, at least from my personal experience, coming through undergrad into grad school, I did not have a lot of information on all the possibilities out there for what my education could lead to in terms of career. And I think that that's getting a bit better nowadays, in part because of different activities like this. And so I wanted to give back to students now to help share that information. And so part of this panel, one of the purposes of this panel is to allow students to get that information, whether it's live today or whether it's on YouTube later on, get that information out there. The upshot is that people who go through education in physics and astronomy and potentially go through and get a PhD in that or adjacent fields in STEM may end up in an academic career route, may end up at a university, or they may end up in a whole plethora of other different careers that are out there that we try to highlight through this series that we have. So joining us here in the room are a bunch of our REU students at Northwestern. And we also have many students from all around the country from other REU programs. If you're willing, in the chat, if you would type your name and your REU program that you're at. I suppose you don't have to type your name because we'll see that anyway, but type the REU program that you're at so that we can get a sense of how many people from all around the country are joining us. We have a great group of panelists here, and including actually for the first time ever, a past CIERA REU student who is now in an illustrious career, as she'll introduce herself later. But before I go, I just want to thank also Chase Kimball, who's over here to my left. Chase is the co-director of our REU program this year. He's been doing an amazing job, and he also did essentially all of the hard work to make this panel happen this year. And I'm just here introducing for continuity across the years. And I'm going to hand it over to Chase. Chase, if you wanted to introduce yourself a little bit and then let the panelists introduce themselves, and I'll let you take over.
Sounds good. Thanks, Aaron. I'm Chase Kimball. I am a just finished PhD student here at CIERA. I am looking to transfer into industry, so I'll be paying very close attention to everything that these panelists say. As Aaron mentioned, we'll start by having our panelists give a brief introduction to themselves and their work. And then afterwards, we'll move to a Q&A format. First, I just want to name everyone on the panel. We have Dr. Eve Chase, a data scientist in the public sector. Dr. Bruce Edelman, machine learning and AI engineer at Sandbox Semiconductor. Dr. Natalia Lampor, a consultant at Bain & Company, and Dr. Wenfei Fang, a professor here at Northwestern University in CIERA. So to get started, Eve, would you please tell us more about yourself?
Sure. So as Chase said, I am a data scientist in the public sector. So I currently work as a data scientist in the federal government, and I've taken a bit of a long and windy path to get there. So my intro may be a little bit longer than brief, but there's a lot of details there that hopefully we can ask about later. But I started as a physics major at the College of William & Mary. I did an REU every summer in college, so 3 REUs. And then I went to Northwestern for my astronomy PhD, where I worked on gravitational wave data analysis, mostly in the LIGO collaboration. And about halfway through grad school, I realized that I didn't want to follow an academic path, and I decided to pivot my grad school career to focus more on data science. And I ended up taking a leave of absence for about 4 months from Northwestern and did an internship at Los Alamos National Lab, where I was a data scientist on an astronomy project. I liked that a lot, and ended up going back to Los Alamos after I finished my PhD to work on, it was 20% astronomy and 80% data science for different government satellite programs. I really liked the part of the job that was data science for the government, but I wanted to live back in Chicago. So I ended up pivoting my career to work as a data scientist in the government accountability sector. I've had two different jobs in that realm. One was with the city of Chicago government, working in the Civilian Office of Police Accountability. And the second job is my current position, which is in the US General Services Administration's Office of the Inspector General, GSAOIG, where my job is to use data to look for patterns of waste, fraud, and abuse in government programs. And that often relates to looking at fraud and government purchasing. So yeah, I'll stop there.
Great, thanks, Eve. Bruce, could you introduce yourself?
Yeah, so I'm Bruce Edelman. I started my academic career getting my undergrad in physics at Purdue University. And I did not do any REUs there, but I did do research I did not do REUs anywhere else. I did some research in my undergrad at Purdue in atomic physics. Then I went to do a PhD in physics at University of Oregon. During that time, I switched to doing more astrophysics and gravitational wave research as well. And at the end of my PhD, I thought about staying in an academic career. I went back and forth for a long time. It's a very hard decision, as I'm sure some other people can relate to as well. And then I ended up not wanting to go down that path. My next job that I transferred to right after my PhD was a little bit interesting and kind of surprising that it came up, but I wanted to stay in Oregon, which was another big reason why I didn't want to go down the academic path. And I found a job posting at the University of Oregon for a research scientist and software engineer job at a computational biology lab, which was a big change. So I spent about 7 months doing that, where it was very similar to, being in the academic realm, but I was expanding my domain of expertise and things a lot, doing much different things, doing biology, computational biology that I had not done before. But that was always a temporary thing in my mind as I'm wanting to transition into data science or machine learning industry positions. And just earlier this year, I got a job, or got my current job, which is a machine learning and AI engineer at a small startup called Sandbox Semiconductor. So we're working in the semiconductor industry, making software solutions that use AI and machine learning to help optimize semiconductor manufacturing. And that's where I've been there. It's a remote position, so I've been able to stay in Oregon as I wanted to. But yeah, that's it.
Great, thanks, Bruce. Natalia?
Hi, everyone. My name's Natalia Lancor. I started my journey at Loyola University majoring in biochemistry. Took my first physics class, loved physics. So then I added a physics major onto that, but I was pre-med up until right before my senior year. Then I decided I might want to pursue a PhD. So I frantically applied to some REUs and ended up doing one at Northwestern CIERA. That was back in 2017, which makes me want to throw up that it was that long ago. But after that, I decided to do a PhD in environmental engineering at Northwestern. And sometime pretty soon into my PhD, I decided I didn't want to stay in academia. So I looked at other options, and something I stumbled upon was management consulting. I did an internship with Bain. It's a 1-week internship specifically for PhD students in May of 2022. It was a very cool nonprofit project, and And I got a job offer and started at Bain in November of last year. And now my project is in the retail space, very different, but I'd be happy to talk about like the types of work that we do and other things.
Thanks, Natalia. And Wenfei?
Hi, my name is Wenfei Fong. I'm an associate professor here at Northwestern in the physics and astronomy department. I'm an observational astronomer, so I'll just tell a little bit about my research first and then talk about the trajectory. But I basically use telescopes across the electromagnetic spectrum, so radio, optical, infrared, X-ray telescopes to study our transient universe. So transients are things that change in brightness over time. I'm really interested in the most energetic explosions in our universe called gamma ray bursts, as well as an interesting class of objects called fast radio bursts where we don't know their origin. So I'm just really excited about like the fast and furious universe and observing it in all colors. And I lead a research group and currently have 5 graduate students and a couple of postdoctorates associated with my group. So as far as my trajectory, I feel like I'm the oldest on this panel, but I went to MIT for undergraduate. I got a bachelor's in physics. I will importantly say I applied to a ton of REU programs and did not get into any of them, but I was very persistent in pursuing research opportunities and knocked on a lot of doors, sent a ton of emails, and ended up landing my first kind of internship at the University of Rochester. Where I'm from, Rochester, New York. So that was just kind of like my hometown university, and then eventually got a little internship at MIT as well. So persistence is key. I know you're all here because you are in REU programs, but just to say that having no's early on is okay in the career, and I think we'll probably touch upon that several times here. And then I went on to pursue my PhD in astronomy at Harvard, and then did a postdoctorate. I got a fellowship to pursue more observational astronomy at the University of Arizona in Tucson. If you've never been to Tucson, it's like a beautiful city surrounded by mountains, and on those mountains there are lots of telescopes. So it was really perfect for my research, and then joined the faculty at Northwestern in 2018. And just a couple other things since I'm joining the faculty, I've been on the graduate admissions committee for 3 or 4 years and chaired it once. So if you have particular questions just about admissions, I hope to answer at least how we do things here. And then just the other thing I wanted to say is if you want to go to graduate school or want to pursue a particular career path, don't give up because I have tons of stories of in particular on the graduate, applying to graduate school side of people applying to grad school, maybe not getting in their first time, doing something else, and then coming back. And so I can tell you tons and tons of stories of how it worked out. So that was the one piece of advice I wanted to start with. And that's it.
Great, thanks, Wenfei. So now we'll start the Q&A portion. As Erin said, I will start. I'll alternate between taking questions from students here and the chat. People on Zoom. If you're on Zoom, please raise your hand and I will call on you. Otherwise, yes, please remain muted. So any questions to get started?
I have a question for Natalia. I'm Amanda Newton. I go to Loyola Chicago, if that's what you mentioned. But I know that you work in consulting, and I've always found that career interesting because it seems super businessy, but you can come at it with like a scientific background. So I want to ask how much science you use in your like day-to-day work.
Yeah, that's a great question. I use zero science in my day-to-day work. So it was a huge pivot. When I was looking at consulting careers, there are like life science consulting. So there are opportunities to use science. And even I haven't been on any of these projects yet, but a lot of companies are looking to like meet sustainability goals and work in like the energy sector and stuff like that. So I think there's like opportunity to have like the context of science, but there aren't any hard science skills that I use. However, in recent years, I think consulting firms have been targeting people with science backgrounds, and I think that's why they kind of make a concerted effort to have PhDs apply as well because of the softer skills that we possess that can be applied to consulting. At Bain, everything that we do is data-driven and hypothesis first. So those are some like fun keywords that are actually applied. Yeah, we comb through a lot of data, nothing as intense as you would see in a PhD program, but we have that. And then another like helpful thing has been finding like the right balance of being able to do independent work, but then like working with a team. So I know it's like a long-winded answer, but I absolutely do not use any science in my current role. But I get to learn about a bunch of different industries and learn new skills, which is what attracted me to the career.
Thank you.
I see we have a question from the Cornell Astro room.
Okay.
Yes, sorry about the weird camera. Hi, I'm Rose. I go to Lawrence University in Wisconsin. I'm a physics and math undergraduate, and I'm currently doing the Cornell REU program. I noticed pretty much all of you said that you started out wanting to go into academia, which is also the plan that I have right now. But most of you ended up not in academia. And so I'm curious, for all of you, what were the reasons that you wanted to pursue academia? And for those of you who ended up in other places, what were the reasons you decided not to do?
Any panelists want to start, or should I call on somebody?
Well, I can echo something Bruce alluded to, which is that I realized I really like Chicago, wanted to stay in Chicago. There's really only a handful of places in the US that I'd like to live. And that was just like one of a few different factors for me was being able to have a choice in where I live, because I don't think I was going to reach a point in astronomy where I could directly pick the city I lived in.
I'll jump in as well and say, yeah, so location was one of the biggest factors for me as well. I applied to postdocs all around, kind of, trying to stay in academia. Honestly, 2 years, 1 year before I graduated, and then my final year as well. And I was offered some, but none in the Pacific Northwest, which is where I wanted to stay. Also, just being the nature of my research, there was less groups around other than, staying at my current school, which wasn't a possibility. Well, I guess it was a possibility because I did stay there for 7 months, but not doing the same research. So that was the biggest factor for wanting to move away from academia, is just because I wanted to stay in the Pacific Northwest as well. You also asked about the reasons why I did want to stay in, or why we wanted to go the academic route. So grad school was a lot of fun for me, I'd say. It's not always great for everyone. It depends obviously on where you go in your group and everything, but I enjoyed it a lot. And just the thought of, continuing my research, continuing that free kind of direction to work on whatever you wanted, to think about whatever you thought was the most interesting, was really enticing to me. So that was one of the big reasons why I was trying to pursue that for a while. Yeah.
Yeah, I can say for someone who's kind of stayed the academic route, I think the first kind of pivotal experience for me with realizing that academia could really be a genuine career path was during undergraduate, when I had that first internship at the University of Rochester and was just first exposed to that life and was really attracted to the pace of research. Kind of the open-endedness of questions can sometimes be frustrating, but I had a really positive first experience, and so actually I was really just attracted to how researchers go about asking questions, kind of like the freedom of thought that that isn't necessarily conducive to the classroom sometimes, but was just a very different way of thinking. And I'm sure many of you experiencing research this year kind of are running into possibly similar things where it's kind of just a new way to think about things. And I unfortunately don't have experience outside of the academic sector to give a comparison, like zero. I didn't even ever have an internship outside of a university. So I can't directly compare, but I was just very attracted to that. I also really liked within astronomy in particular, the community is fairly small, even compared to other fields. And so I liked that kind of sense of community in this particular field, and then kind of just rode the wave. I think there were several times along the path where if I had gotten a no, I probably would have gone a different way. That's why I'm trying to impress upon you that if it's really your desired path, that don't let one no deter you. But yeah, hopefully that answers the question from that perspective.
I could just add my 2 cents in here. I think my reasons for going into academia and then leaving academia are about the same reasons. I was really interested in going into academia to be able to learn something new, like very deeply, and hopefully be able to change the world in some way through my research. And I don't know, through the PhD, which I did love and would absolutely do it again, I realized that I wanted to learn more things and change the world in different ways, which is why I went the business route, specifically consulting, because you're exposed to a lot of different things. And when clients are paying your company millions of dollars, they're bound to listen to what you're saying, which is a nice change of pace.
Thank you. Question from the room.
My name is Farah Molina, and I'm a CIERA student here at Northwestern this summer. And I have a question for the panelists who were not in academia. Did you have to get any other type of certifications or take any other classes to successfully make the pivot to where you are now? Or did your PhD give you were you able to market yourself based on the skills that you gained from doing your PhD?
I can take this one quickly because for me, the way consulting works is you can come straight out of undergrad or you can come out of business school, and they treat PhDs as a business school equivalent. So there wasn't any additional training I needed to do to go on my path. It was just the PhD, and then they train you the rest of the way.
I can expand on that. I think there are plenty of data scientists, both in the private sector and public sector, that come straight from their PhD into their roles without getting any other additional certifications or things like that. But I think almost everyone probably has to learn some new skills for the interview process. And I often feel like coming from an astronomy PhD, I knew the hard things really well, but was missing a few of the easy skills. So to this day, my Python is, I've been totally fine in all of my jobs. My Python's been good, my statistics good, machine learning good. It was SQL and using some dashboarding systems like Power BI and Tableau was what I was missing. And those are things that a lot of people Google and teach themselves. So I took the time to Google and teach myself.
I'll jump in too and just sort of quickly and say I did not have any other training or certifications leading my way outside of academia. I do think my transitional role that was still in a university, but much different domain than I had done in the past, helped me stand out to some of the positions I was applying to, because it showed that I could apply these same statistical skills, programming skills, machine learning skills in multiple domains. And obviously, maybe not obviously, but all the jobs I was applying to were not physics or biology, right? There's not very many physics and biology. Well, maybe biology, there's a lot, but I'm not a biologist. Jobs in the industry sector. So yeah, I think just showing the flexibility of being able to apply tools across multiple domains helped me.
Thank you. I don't see any hands raised on Zoom. Just a reminder, if you have a question on Zoom, feel free to raise your hand. And but in the meantime, yes, and as Aaron said, questions are also welcome in the chat. We're just going to prioritize people who have their hands raised to ask live questions. So I guess we'll go back to the room. Any questions here?
Hi, my name is Leah. I go to school at Illinois Tech. And my question is, how did you know what grad schools you wanted to apply to?
I can start. I think I'll say that my way I wouldn't recommend today. It was more so I'll say what I did, which was basically saying I want to live in that city, that city, that city, that city, that place. And like, what are the programs? And I'm going to apply to all of them. I think it was a little bit arbitrary in that sense. I would say now what I would give advice to incoming students or prospective students are look for, understand what you want. So if it's kind of like a niche area, understand what the programs in that space are, like which programs are famous for that area, and then start seeing if that aligns with kind of the locations you might want to live in. And then also, if you have any mentors at your university or, from the REU that you're doing this summer, that you can go over that list with, that's also helpful because they can add places that they may know of. So yeah, that's what I would recommend.
I'll jump in. One thing that I used when I was searching for grad schools in physics was I think they had a book version and there's like a website called Grad School Shopper. I think it's like presented by the American Institute for Physicists now, but is mainly focused on physics programs, but also physics and astronomy programs. So that had like a ton of information about all these different programs. And at the time I was doing atomic physics, so I was looking, basically making a big list of all the schools that were in a reasonable location to me that had a good presence in AMO physics, atomic molecular and optical physics. And then just kind of narrowing down, knowing like there was also constraints, right? Like it cost money to apply to these places. So like how much money do I have to apply to these things? And this is how many, okay, so now I know how many schools I can apply to. And then there was also other forums. I think it might have been still on Grad School Shopper forum or something related to that, of like previous students would post all their application materials, or maybe not the materials, but like their test scores, their GPA, their research experiences, and then all the schools they applied to, and then their results from all the schools. And if you look, I looked at that a lot over my time applying, and to figure out like what kind of application do I need to be competitive at these schools. And then with all of that information together, I then took my list and separated it into picking out some like really good schools that I might not be good enough to make it into, some schools I thought I would be good or had a good chance of, and then schools that I thought I had a really good chance of making, so that I cover all my bases. But that's kind of how I went about the grad school applications.
I feel like I treated it not as applying to a graduate program or a school, but like applying to work with a specific professor. So I looked through, well, I started like targeting the schools that I knew had great physics programs, started reading through all of the professors' researches, looking for something that resonated with me. I had a hard time finding something that truly interested me, which is why I started going the interdisciplinary route and started looking at programs where maybe like physics and other sciences come into play, like environmental engineering. And again, went through the process of looking up professors and reading their bios, reading some of their papers, and then sending them emails telling them that I'm interested in working with them, getting some insight on if they're taking students, what their labs look like. And then sometimes I got responses that said they're not taking students. I'm like, I'm not going to apply to that school. Another time, a lot of people are very excited to talk about their research and taking on students. So was able to have a lot of phone conversations, some in-person visits, and that basically made my decision for me.
Great, thank you. So I see we now have questions from the Zoom. I will, because I did 2 in a row from here, I'll do 2 in a row from the Zoom. So it looks like there's one from the Duke/TUNL room.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. My name is Jordan McPherson. I'm here at the Duke REU program, and I was wondering, I've heard a lot of people saying that you make more money in industry. So for those of you who decided not to go into academia, was compensation another deciding factor?
I will say yes, but more so for the postdoc. I graduated undergrad with a substantial amount of student loan debt, and those loans were paused all throughout graduate school. And I knew that as soon as I was done with my PhD, those were going to kick back in. And I was pretty afraid. I also knew that I wasn't able to, most of my loans are not through the federal government, they're through a bank. And I was going to owe $2,000 a month in student loans graduating from my PhD. And I was pretty afraid looking at typical postdoc salaries. And I will give a plug for the national labs and say that if you're interested in doing something very directly related to science, but are worried about compensation, the national labs could be a good middle ground there. But going to Los Alamos, I had enough money that I was able to refinance my student loans, and it's not a problem at all anymore. But staying in astronomy long term can be lucrative for some people, maybe not so lucrative for others. And I'd also caution anyone from making a decision just based on money. There's a lot more to life than your salary. And I think a lower paying job where you really like what you're doing and work with people you really enjoy is much more valuable than something that makes 50 grand more.
Yeah, I completely agree with Eve. I was in a very similar situation, a lot of undergraduate debt, and was a little afraid of the postdoc salary, but that wouldn't be like the only driver for my decision. I think I would have gone into industry anyways, based on how I was feeling.
Right. So we'll go one more from the Zoom. I apologize if I'm pronouncing this wrong, but Sadman.
Hello, yeah, it's Sadman. Yeah, I am a physics and astronomy student at LSU, and I'm currently doing a RU here for the LIGO collaboration. And I love that how so many of the collab panelists are like have done their research somewhat in LIGO, and I see like Bruce is wearing like a gravitational wave shirt, which is amazing. So now coming down to my question, I'm sorry, is that how do you guys, so when you are applying to your PhD programs, did you only apply to the fields where you did your RUs in? And if not, how did you narrow down the fields that you were interested in?
I can take this again. I think that I was a little too narrow with how I applied to graduate school. So I said I'd done 3 RUs, and I felt really confident that gravitational wave data analysis is what I wanted to do. And that's what I ended up doing in my PhD. But in terms of applying to graduate programs, there really aren't a ton of programs that do exactly what I wanted to do for my PhD. And I do wish I had opened that up a little bit more, although I still ended up going to exactly the school I wanted to do and did exactly what I went in hoping for. But also a benefit of doing REUs is that you can apply to the school that you did your REU program at. So that gave me 3 schools to apply to.
Yeah, I'll also say that I did also like apply to schools that had a decent presence in the field that I thought I was wanting to go into and interested in. The interesting thing, though, that you should be aware of is plans change and your interests may change. And that's what happened to me. And I switched fields or subfields, I guess, as when I went into graduate school. So even if you are like fairly certain about what subfield you are wanting to go into, it's always good to leave some wiggle room and be open. Grad school is a long time. It's going to be a lot harder if you're doing something that you're not as interested in. So I would caution everyone to be open-minded in subfields, and when you're looking for grad schools, and even once you start in graduate school.
Yeah, I definitely echo what Eve and Bruce said, especially in terms of being open-minded. I think if you had a very positive RU experience, that's great. At least you know there's one thing that you would really love and continue to, and that can be a great starting point for like if you're working in supernovae, for instance, you look at a bunch of other faculty across the country who are experts in that, and it's a good starting point. But then, yeah, again, don't be afraid to kind of branch out and talk about other things you might be interested in. As an example, I think that if you are too narrow and very focused in your application in terms of what you think you want to do, that can sometimes, in some cases, work against you. For instance, if you're extremely interested in kind of pursuing, black hole accretion theoretically, then and if that particular institution, maybe has an expert in that, but that person's not taking students, then the committee might think that there's not a home for you at that institution. So even though if you're qualified, if you kind of cast yourself as being extremely interested in that and only that, then that can sometimes kind of work against you, if that makes sense. So again, like I'd cast a wide net, and my personal experience was like, I brought up theoretical black hole accretion because that's what I'd worked in my first internship, and I was kind of excited about that. But I did cast a wide net in my PhD application, and then I totally switched to observational astronomy during my first year of grad school, just like the second semester. So and I never thought I would have been an observational astronomer, and here I am. So I definitely think being open-minded is in the application, and also if and when you get to grad school is very important.
All right, so question from the room?
Hello, I'm Rayon and I'm here at Sierra. I go to California State University, Long Beach. I had a question for those of you who perhaps maybe didn't have any sort of close family members who had done PhDs / grad programs on where you found the best support personally for not only just like the grad application process, but even just like transitioning your life into being a graduate student. Coming from like someone who like I've never had family members go into like academia or grad school, so.
Yeah, so neither of my parents have finished college. So I was the first person in my family to go to college, and my parents always wanted me to be a doctor, but they also loved Big Bang Theory, so they were excited about me being a physicist. And that's kind of like where their knowledge of that was. But I think what really helped me with the process was doing my REU at CIERA. I think I learned a lot of like valuable skills on like what research is and how to like apply to these programs and like how to network with professors. And then also having like a mentor wherever you can find one, but I had one in my undergrad institution, and he was so incredibly helpful. I think he knew what I wanted to do better than what I knew even. It was just like supportive and would always talk to me about like various paths. And then when you go into PhD program, you have your advisor who I had a great advisor who was always very supportive of everything I wanted to do. It was a very close cohort. There was only 5 of us, so we all supported each other. And even though I didn't go the physics astronomy route, I think what was true about environmental engineering is true here too. They're like typically smaller programs, I think. So you have like that close sense. So you all kind of support each other. The professors want to see you succeed. So I think that's where I found a lot of the support.
Yeah, I should also mention I don't have any family members in grad school, so it was all very new to me. One thing that was, I don't know if it's like this at every school, but in my undergrad, we had like the academic advisor for the physics department was actually really helpful. She put on this like little panel every year about giving all the students who are interested in going to grad school these materials and timelines on when you should be doing things, and I was completely unaware of it. I honestly didn't even know that I needed to have research experience to go to grad school. Like I said, I didn't do an REU, but like going to that, I learned like, oh, this is really important. So I didn't even start doing research until my junior year in undergrad. And it was thankful just to that advisor that I was able to do that and then be prepared to apply to grad schools. And then additionally, if you are doing research, the postdocs or graduate students in your group that you're with I've always found being very helpful, and they want to help the younger students be successful as well. So they're great people to ask for advice from.
Yeah, I would definitely say if you have any either advisors or professors who, like you did, you loved their class, for instance, and developed a good relationship with them, do not hesitate to reach out to them and set up a meeting just to talk about, how to apply for grad school, again, going through the list of grad school, like get that support. Because I think that as faculty members, we're always really willing to talk about things beyond research, believe it or not. And so definitely leverage any advisors or mentors who you've clicked with, even if they're kind of from your past, to answer any of those questions. I also my parents didn't go to graduate school or anything, so it was I really heavily leaned on my 2 mentors during my undergraduate who were at MIT and at University of Rochester to not only write me letters, but also coach me through the process of getting rejected from a ton of schools and feeling that rejection, and my mom being like, well, I don't know if this is a good idea. You've gotten rejected from all these schools, and having the positivity. I mean, my mom's positive, but I'm just wasn't accustomed to kind of that level because she has like a corporate job. So yeah, I think leaning on mentors, advisors, and then your REU cohorts, you're hopefully developing some of the best friendships you'll have this summer, and really leaning on those cohorts for support is important.
I don't have much to add, but I'll say that I'd love to answer more questions about life after grad school.
Awesome. Okay, let's see. We have Lauren on Zoom.
Hi, my name's Lauren. I'm at the Wesleyan Astronomy REU right now. And I don't really know if it's partly after grad, but I guess more so, I would really love to continue doing astronomy later on in my life. And I'm wondering, do I need to do grad school in order to have a career in this? Are there options that are open to me for doing astronomy if I don't go to grad school, and like where is the diversity of what you're able to do, or if that's not something you can answer, then if you hadn't gone to grad school, would you have done anything differently?
That's a good question. And I know of some opportunities to do research or work related to astronomy, sometimes directly in the government, like at places like the Naval Observatory, even maybe some NASA positions that don't directly require a PhD. I also know of people that work closer to science outreach, but maybe have some research components to their job that haven't gone to graduate school or left a PhD program. So looking for like different planetariums around the world. I know someone in England doing that kind of work. But I think by and large, most astronomy careers um, are at least definitely helped by having the PhD.
Yeah, I will say I hesitated because I don't know too many opportunities that definitely do not require a PhD that would be embedded in astronomy. I think one that comes to mind is being like a telescope operator, for instance. I don't think you need a PhD for that. Working as staff at a telescope, servicing instruments, that kind of thing, I don't think require PhDs. And then as Eve alluded to, there are various outreach positions embedded in astronomy departments that do not, and then planetarium and stuff that don't require a PhD. Another kind of possible option is if you're not exactly sure, but kind of excited about the possibility, you can always apply to a PhD and then just get your master's and then go from there. So there's always a possibility of you don't have to go in and then, complete the PhD. You can get the master's, and that might open up some more opportunities.
Right, thank you. Question from the room.
Hi everyone, my name is Masha Filibarda and I usually study at Harvard College. I'm a physics and astronomy major there, but I'm here at CIERA this summer. And so my question would be, what would you say is the most challenging part of your job? And like, how do you deal with those challenges? Like, what are some strategies you use to like relax or to like kind of try and like navigate the life challenges of your job?
All right, this is a question for everyone, so I will, I guess, just go down the line. Eve, why don't you go first?
So by and large, I've really liked the life I have working as a data scientist in the government sector. The thing that comes to mind is honestly the bureaucracy issue of working in the government. So there are certain things that should take 5 minutes that somehow manage to take 5 hours, and that can be very, very annoying. I'm just used to it, and I sort of view it as the price I need to pay to be able to do this work that I find to be rewarding and fun. But I have not felt stressed out in my job. But I do find it to be rewarding, and I do spend entire days engaged with the work I'm doing. But that work is always 9 to 5, which is a really nice change for me.
All right, Bruce.
Yeah, so I'm not exactly sure what I would consider like the hardest or most stressful parts of the job. I think one big change for me that's been a little bit harder to grasp and get more comfortable with in the industry job away from academia is kind of just like the speed of everything. Everything moves a lot faster than I was used to in grad school or my research scientist position at the University of Oregon. So I was used to, be able to spend a lot of time thinking very deeply about problems and projects. And nowadays in my work, I have to move between lots of different things very quickly. There's lots more deadlines. So that can be stressful at times and it's been hard to adjust to. But there's also benefits from it. I mean, you can learn a lot faster and learn new things a lot faster. And sometimes, you know, when you're busy, you can be time can fly by.
Natalia?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna echo everything that Bruce said. I'm trying to think like what stresses me out the most, but I think I'm very naturally a stressful person. So like everything stresses me out, but I also love it. But it's definitely the pace. In your PhD, you have 5 years to solve one problem, and here someone will like ask me to do something, be like, can you have it to me in an hour? And I'm like, in an hour? I'm like, there's no way I could do that. But then you do it and everything is fine. But yeah, things just move very fast. And I've been on the same project for 6 months, which is very unusual in consulting. Usually these projects are 6 weeks and they're across different industries. So you're learning a completely different industry, working with a completely different group of people and balancing their like learning style, their management style, and just trying to get your work done. But I think it's like pretty exhilarating working that way. It makes the days go by really fast. And they're very interesting too, because there's none of that like monotonous work that you have to do. So
Thank you.
Hello, this is Samuel Cope.
Oh,
I'm currently at the
I'm
National
sorry,
Radio Astronomy
Samuel.
Observatory. Can you hear me?
Yeah, Samuel, we're calling on people to ask questions. If you raise your hand in the on Zoom,
Okay.
I'd be happy to call on you, all right?
Yep, I can do that. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, Wenfei, you haven't gotten out of answering this question.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I was thinking there's a lot of challenges. I would say the biggest challenge for me starting out was the kind of the managerial aspects of the job. I think a lot of the PhD and postdoc track is really based on your own kind of research and charting your own path, and then suddenly you're responsible for a group, or, you know, in the case of graduate students, you're really responsible for I feel responsible for kind of their trajectory and like their future career, and like what if I give them a good project and that project ends up bearing fruit, then I feel responsible for kind of their future success. And I think kind of being able uh to to manage kind of that and manage a group, manage my own expectations of students who learn differently has been a big learning curve for me. But I would say similarly the most rewarding, because you realize if you can really click or connect with a student and their learning style, then it just makes you learn how to be a better mentor. So I would say the management stuff that I was never taught, never prepped for, and still to this day I'm learning a lot about, is probably the biggest challenge of the job.
Thank you. So next up we have from Zoom, Adriana.
Hi, yes. So I'm Adriana. I go to school at Notre Dame, but I'm at the LSU Physics and Astronomy REU this summer. And my question was, this is just kind of about grad school and timelines as well. The advising at my school is pretty hit or miss. But so I just wanted to ask, when is a good time to start putting together like a relatively final list of grad schools that you're interested in, and like how do you go about reaching out to those professors, and just like timeline for that kind of side of the prep?
Yeah, I can say as far as timeline for putting together a list, it's never too early, but you can always also like add schools as you go. So, you know, it might be something that's good to start thinking about toward the end of this summer, just when you have time and before your busy semesters start, because once, you know, that senior year starts, it can be daunting to do that. And thank goodness that the GRE is out of a lot of programs now, but maybe if you have to take the GRE, preparing for that and doing the application. So having like a reasonable first draft of a list toward the very end of summer might be a good suggestion, although it's okay if it's pushed a bit later. I think most of the the grad school apps aren't due till December, at least. And then as far as reaching out to professors, I will say, just like for perspective, I get, I don't know, maybe order of 50 to 100 emails from students. I cannot read them all, and I cannot meet with students anymore on my research. I often direct students to my own graduate students if they really want to meet with somebody. So my advice would be, if you do reach out to professors, simply keep it short. You can introduce yourself, but like your application will have to go through the whole committee and process. So it's not, you don't really have to put a huge kind of biography of yourself in the email. It can simply be a brief introduction and just asking if that professor is taking students. I think you're much more likely to get responses if your emails are short. And that the timeline for that can be anytime throughout the fall.
Thank you. Okay, question from the room.
My name is Elizabeth and I'm here at Sierra, but I go to Georgia Tech. And I wanted to know kind of like how your work-life balance is both now and in graduate school and how it kind of compares.
Since this is a question for everybody, I guess I'll go down the line again. This is just, it's not, it is a semi-random order, and that's the order in which these are on my sheet. So, Eve, you're up again.
So I'll start by saying that I know a lot of people that managed to work 9 to 5 in grad school. That wasn't my experience personally, especially kind of the nature of the work. Being in LIGO, we had a couple intense detections where we were told, drop everything, we're working for 2-3 months here. So there were some very intense times in graduate school where I definitely wouldn't say that my work-life balance was excellent. Although I made an effort to always have like at least one day a week where I wasn't doing any work whatsoever. Since pivoting to the government, my work-life balance has been very good. And a big part of that is that you are literally not allowed to do a large amount of your work outside of work time, especially if you're working at a national laboratory or working in a classified environment. You need to be in a certain building at certain times. And something that I think is really great about that is actually that it forces you to be away from your phone. I miss that a lot, having like 5 hours a day where I don't have any of these distractions. It was really good for me, and I should start trying to hide my phone from myself a bit more. But right now, my work-life balance is very much 9 to 5, and it's been nice.
Bruce?
Yeah, so I think I was maybe one of the more outliers, and I had a pretty good work-life balance in grad school. Outside of, certain small things. I think I joined LIGO after you, Eve, so I didn't have experienced the as craziness as maybe did in the beginning days, or 17 days. But now in my job, I say I also still have good work-life balance. So I think I might have just been lucky. I also think my advisor in grad school was very good about enforcing his own work-life balance, which I think reflected upon the group that, that's important for you to find a balance that works for you. In grad school, I think there was also, like I said, there was times when I would work very late or whatever, but I would always make an effort to, if I had to work super late one night, to get off early, stop working early the next day. But obviously not everybody has that experience, but personally, I feel like it's been pretty good. My industry job right now, I also, like I said, have good work-life balance, but part of that is being remote. I feel like if I had to commute, it would kind of push me over the edge where I'd be like, this is not that great anymore. Because right now, I'm spending my whole 40 plus hours a week working. If I had to add 8 to 9 hours of driving on top of that, it would feel more bad.
Thanks, Bruce. Natalia?
Yeah, think my grad school experience was pretty chill as well. First year was a little harder because you're taking classes, and I think you can spend like forever working on problems and studying. That'll just eat up all your time. But once I started doing research, you can really plan out your experiments, and I had like very short days or days where I could work at home and do analysis. Things picked up when I was trying to finish up my thesis before my defense, but it was relatively chill. Now I have a good work-life balance as far as consultants go. But the consulting lifestyle is not known for good work-life balance. It varies a lot week to week, but I probably typically work about 50 hours a week. Some of my colleagues will work up to 60, not typically beyond that. At other firms, I think it does go beyond that and they have weekend works. So I still don't feel that it's too bad because I really enjoy the work. I have a good routine going. We have a couple of remote days, and I do have about a 40-minute commute each way, but I actually love my commute time because it's on a bus and that's the time I used to read. So, but overall, I have dinner with my husband every night. On weekends, I do things, and I have plenty of like vacation time that I take. So overall, I'm still like very happy with my work-life balance.
Thank you. One thing.
Yeah, during graduate school, I would say work-life balance was not super great, but I will qualify that by the first couple of years are really dominated by classwork, and you're kind of in this, cohort, people who are all, doing multiple problem sets a week and stuff like that. It's almost an extension of undergraduate, but harder, and you're also being asked to do like a little bit of research. And so I think while I would say I was working a lot, it was also a lot of fun because I had that kind of community and, we'd also go out to dinner together and all this stuff and just spend a lot of time together. And still to this day, some of my best friends are from my first year astronomy graduate student cohort. So, it's kind of like a little bit difficult to admit that work-life balance was not great. And then as Eve alluded to, sometimes, you're able to kind of push on, like sometimes the universe gives you like a really exciting event and you need to kind of all work together as a team like 24/7 to try to get this result out, and you're very excited about it. And that's kind of a healthy kind of push to almost self-driven or team-driven push to try to reach a goal because you're just so excited about the science. That's also sometimes will impose in the work-life balance, but hopefully it's like positive. And another thing I'll say is that what I've learned over the years is like it's really, academia, it's like there's always kind of the expectation, like you get an email from a colleague on a weekend or on a weeknight and you feel like you need to respond to that. And I would say that I used to feel like I needed to respond like that colleague's working, so I should be too, or I should take time away from whatever I'm doing. There's always going to be something, and you need to find inner strength, as I've tried to find over the years, to not respond to that email, to kind of set your own boundaries, and I've been better about that. Setting my own boundaries, but realizing that no one else will set those boundaries for me. Just it has to be me.
Great, thank you. So back to Zoom. Looks like we have a question from the Duke/GUNL room.
Hi, I'm Penn. I go to Lebanon Valley College and I'm here with the RU program at Duke. And so I was wondering, after those 5 to 7 years, how do you adjust to not being in school anymore?
I will let anyone jump in.
I can jump in and say it wasn't that much of an adjustment for me, I guess. So the end of my grad school, you're going to do classes for the first few years, but at some point you're going to be done with classes, right? And then your time is really, I guess it depends on what you're doing in your group, whatever, but my time was very up to me to choose however I wanted to use it. And I found a very similar experience when I was transitioned to the research scientist software engineer role I had at University of Oregon, where I was still very similar. I honestly felt like I was still in grad school, just doing other stuff. And yeah, so I feel like it made a good transition for me, and it wasn't too hard of a learning curve or anything. Even at my current role, that's not academic at all. It's still very similar. Maybe it's just how I structured my work as a grad student, but I feel like it wasn't that big of an adjustment.
I'll also echo something Wenfei said earlier, which is that the 5 to 7 years of grad school do feel very different, especially the class heavy years. And then there's sort of for me, there was a slow transition where maybe you're just taking one class at a time to slowly not doing any at all. So grad school's kind of led to a natural transition, especially since I did an internship during grad school at Los Alamos, which is where I ended up working after grad school. It was a very natural transition. Some things that have been hard to transition into, also echoing some of the things Wenfei said, is that interpersonal interactions in the workplace are a little bit different. So how to interact with your supervisor can be quite different with how you interact with your PhD advisor. And that's something I've had to teach myself over time, and I'm still working on.
Great, question from the room?
Hi, my name is Alina. I'm a student at Illinois Tech. I'm here at CIERA this summer. And I wanted to ask, how long does it typically take to do a PhD, and does it vary widely between like physics or astronomy or other majors, or even what topics you end up researching?
It's hard to put an exact number on it. The students that I've seen graduate recently, it's 5 to 7 years, I'd say. I've seen as low as 4. And I would say I know of a current faculty member who took 10 years for his PhD at Berkeley. So I think there's a wide range. But 5 to 7 is I see as the sweet spot currently. Because the students who are graduating now, at least from our program, spent a significant amount of graduate school during the pandemic. I do see that there being an extra year or so tacked on to a lot of those, but I expect that to kind of taper down as we get farther and farther removed from when we were in lockdown. And then I think the only thing in astronomy I can think of is for the subfield differences, sometimes instrumentation PhDs can take longer. So if you have an instrumentation heavy project that doesn't necessarily rely on science papers, but maybe like a delivered result or hardware system, it just might take a little bit longer to get that PhD. But then consequently, I do see those students kind of very marketable on the job market because there's just so few instrumentation PhDs there. So even though you might spend a little bit longer in grad school, I think that your transition to postdoc or beyond the academic sector might be a little bit higher.
Thank you. Going back to Zoom, it looks like we have a question from Claire.
Hi, yeah, my name is Claire. I go to University of Washington, Seattle, and this summer I'm at University of California, Santa Barbara for an REU. And I was wondering, so like I hear a lot about like the general differences between a master's and a PhD, namely like the financing and obviously like the length. But separate from those, I was wondering if you guys feel that there were any differences, like what benefits you gained from the extra four or so years of your PhD as opposed to like mastering out or just going for a master's.
The PhD itself tends to be looked upon very favorably in the government sector. So when applying for grants from different government agencies, we're encouraged to all stick PhD behind our name. And I've even heard of some nonprofits that maybe have data scientists on the team, where when they're applying for grants from the government, they'll actually put the people with PhDs higher up on the list of names applying for the grant, even if they weren't the ones that actually wrote them. So, and then the government also has been a bit slower to phase out education requirements. So there are certain federal jobs that you will qualify at a higher pay level just because you have the PhD. And the years of work experience that count as equivalent to that PhD are quite high. So it's a way for people that are maybe a bit younger to enter the federal government at a higher level.
Yeah, for consulting specifically, if I were to get to where I am now without a PhD, my path would have been to try to get the job out of undergrad and then pay for an MBA, and then I'd come in at this level versus a PhD. You get to do something completely different and, you know, explore yourself a little bit and then still come in at that level without all the debts. And I think like different choices than like coming in with an MBA.
Maybe I can speak to the other part of the question too about like your time during grad school and what you actually get out of the time. So for me, and I think is common for most programs, is that the first few years are mostly courses related to your whatever your field you're in, right? So I got my master's degree just by completing all the coursework. I don't know if that's common across everywhere, but I didn't have much research experience, I think, at the time I got my master's degree, because I was mainly focusing that time on classes. So I think a lot of like the skills that I use today in my job, I developed in my later years of my PhD program. And sure, you can develop these skills anywhere. It's not like you have to do it in school, but it was also more free because you're not focused on classes, that you could tailor your time to learn skills that you thought would be the most valuable rather than spending that time passing these classes. And that may not be that useful for you going forward if you're leaving academics.
Thank you. Let's see, a question from the room.
Hi, my name is Catalina. I am a physics and astronomy major here at Northwestern. And my question is for all the panelists. If you can mention something like looking back for your journey that you're proud of, what would it be and why?
So this is explicitly for all the panelists. So again, I'll go down the line, but this time in reverse order. So one thing.
Yeah, sorry, I missed it. It was something that you're proud of along the whole path. Was that right?
Yes, so I think the question was it throughout your PhD specifically, or?
The end of like undergrad.
Yeah, so since the end of undergrad, if there's one thing you're proud of in your journey, what would it be?
Oh gosh. Till now?
Yes.
Oh gosh. Okay. I will say that this is kind of maybe I'll come up with a better answer, but I would say that I did not realize how I always knew I wanted to be a professor, and I'm really happy I got here to do research and stuff, but I didn't realize how impactful it would be on me to be able to train students and see them graduate and see them go off to different careers. So I just my first two PhD students that I ever graduated from my group graduated in the past 2 weeks, and that was very exciting for me. So I know it was like an extremely recent accomplishment, but I just felt like, this, I didn't like when I was an undergraduate, I never really thought, oh, my purpose is to train the next generation. I thought, oh, my purpose is just to like do whatever research I'm really excited about and answer the mysteries of the universe. But I feel like now, being a faculty member, I feel like I have a new purpose, which is training the next generation and seeing them succeed and being like having others find their passion. So I'm actually just extremely proud of that.
Thank you. So Natalia?
That was such a good answer. I don't want to follow that up. But thinking specifically through my PhD, it's not like really one moment, but I'm very proud of like the confidence and like the ability to explain like difficult problems and issues in a way that's easy for others to understand through like giving scientific presentations. And we did like monthly presentations in our lab group. And I remember always being so shy and stressed and anxious in undergrad and high school, having to like give these presentations. And now it feels a lot more natural. And I think that's helped me a lot in my non-science role now.
Thank you. Bruce?
Yeah, so I think I can piggyback and echo both of what Winfei said and Natalia. Winfei is on a much smaller scale, but I helped mentor undergraduates while I was in grad school, and seeing them, develop their research skills, apply to grad schools. One of them, got into all the grad schools they applied to was very, very rewarding and fulfilling to see and to help younger people along their journey. And additionally, I was also in the same position as Talia, very, very nervous about presenting and speaking and things, not very confident. I think I thought, I can't even count how many times I thought I'm going to leave grad school in the first like 3 years. But there's some phase transition for me, and like my starting like year 4 where things just became natural, where you just became much more confident and it just felt really good. Yeah.
Thanks. And Eve?
I'll give a bit of a raw answer, but I consider finishing my PhD to be the thing I am most proud of in my entire life. And I hold on to that very closely. And I hope that many of you feel similarly if and when you finish your PhDs. For me, grad school was unusual, challenging, very difficult in some ways that I wouldn't want to go into in the call. And I got incredibly close to dropping out and did not think I would ever finish. So the fact that I did finish and finish with work that I was proud of was huge for me. And something that was occasionally disappointing during graduate school was that I would watch students that were more senior than me finish their PhDs and not make a big deal out of it. Just finish and like go back to their desk and take a meeting and start working or something. And it made it seem like it wasn't an achievement to finish your PhD. So I'd encourage like any of you, if you're watching someone finish their PhD, congratulate them, give them the time to be proud of that and realize that they've made an accomplishment. And don't downplay the fact that finishing grad school is an accomplishment, even if it seems like everyone around you in your 5th year is finishing your PhD.
Thank you. Those are all great answers. Thank you. So from Zoom, I see a hand from, is it Lewis?
Yeah, hi, my name's Louis. I'm an astronomy student at Wesleyan. And you might not have a lot of insight into this, and so that's okay. But I was wondering, I believe it was Eve, specifically about national labs as sort of like the academic path post doc of like either going into like professor university or like a national lab. I was wondering if you have any insight as to the specific, like maybe kind of key differences in sort of joining and maybe like the work at a national lab versus like at a university.
Sure. Yeah. So I worked at Los Alamos National Laboratory for a while, but there are 3 different types of Department of Energy national labs, and there's other national labs through other agencies. The 3 DOE types are Office of Science laboratories or National Nuclear Security Administration national laboratories. And then there's a few that fall into this other category. So if you're at Office of Science, most of your work is basic research, while if you're at an NNSA laboratory, people there are either entirely basic research, some mixture of basic research and government related work, or entirely government related work. It varies a lot. And something I've been told is that working at a national laboratory, you can expect to do maybe a similar amount of research to a professor, where the difference is that a professor spends time teaching, writing grants, serving on committees, while at a national lab, you spend time serving on committees, also writing grants, and doing various other scientific related tasks for work for the government. There's a big range of work that goes on at national labs, and I recommend looking into some of the available post-bac programs if you're interested. Those could be really good programs.
Great, thank you. Another question from the room?
Hi, my name is Jessica, and I go to Augustana College, but I'm at CIERA this summer. I was just wondering, what is one piece of advice that you have for all of us as we're finishing undergrad, maybe going to grad school, or just something that you wish you had knew at our age?
All right, so this is for everyone. I'm gonna go same order as last time, so Wenfei?
Yeah, I guess I'll just repeat earlier what I said is you might encounter no's, especially if you do, in this case, apply to grad school. And I do have several examples of people who applied to grad school, applied to tons, didn't get in, took a year off to do a bit more research, develop that application a bit more, and then are flying high in faculty positions now. So I think yeah, that's the one thing I would do is if don't give up on the dream, if that is your dream.
Thank you. Natalia?
I think my piece of advice is to just keep an open mind. You're so young going into graduate school and like through graduate school and starting your career. I think it's okay to not know exactly what it is that you want to do and change your mind a couple of times and try different things. And I think you're hearing that at this like career panel. There's so many different things. So they just be open, listen to what people have to say, and yeah.
Thank you. Bruce?
Yeah, I guess I would say is like follow whatever interests you the most. So this could be in your subfield that you choose, your professor, your advisor that you choose, a group that you choose to join, or even the projects that you choose or join within that group. I've worked on projects that I've been interested in and ones that I have been less interested in, and it feels much different to work. It feels much better to be working on things you're interested in.
Thank you. Eve?
So Natalia took my answer, which was to keep an open mind and that it's okay if you end up doing something completely different down the line. So I think I'll say something a little more boring and practical, which is that I think a lot of people get to the end of their PhDs and wonder what it would be like to work outside of academia, and that nagging feeling can really kind of get to them. So I actually recommend taking time either in undergrad or a summer in graduate school, or maybe a year between undergrad and grad school to do an internship, or maybe an entirely like 1 year at a company, to make sure that you're not left with this nagging feeling when you're deciding if you want to do a postdoc or something else.
Thank you. We are almost out of time, but I see we have a question on Zoom from Katie.
Hello, my name is Katie. I go to school at Bennington College and I'm doing a REU at Lowell Observatory this summer. And my question was kind of in the chat, but I figured I might as well say it anyway. I'm just curious what it's like to balance having a family and working in academia. I realize this may only apply to one of our panelists, but yeah, it would just be nice to get some insight on that.
Yeah, I'll keep my answer brief, but you have my contact info. Happy to talk more. I'm the parent of a 2-year-old son who is an absolute maniac at times and like the love of my life at others. So, and it definitely just like you think that like I find that my job is kind of high stress, high impact sometimes, but he just like balances it out really well. So you might think that it might be stressful to manage all that, but it actually is just like great kind of cross training to kind of force myself to not think about the workday at all the events. Like I can't because I have to be a full-time parent when I go home. So it's been a lot of fun. And the other thing I'll say is that academia is not necessarily conducive to growing growing a family at various stages. Like you might think graduate school or postdoc, you know, you're moving around the country or the world, and it might not be that conducive. But I would stress like not to put your real life on hold to anybody who's thinking about growing your family to not put that on hold because there will always be excuses to not, and also that your job is just a job. So while I think in academia we often like live, breathe our research and think it's like the most important thing, I think being a parent has just given me perspective that there's so much more to life. And yeah, and I didn't have a kid till I was kind of up for tenure, but I have seen grad students, postdocs, et cetera, have children and be really successful too. So just do not put your real life on hold.
Thank you. So we are just out of time. I think there's only one question in the chat that Wenfei was kind enough to answer by text, but I'll read it out for the benefit of everyone in the room. So the question was from Irene. When applying to grad school, do the admissions committee prefer a student who knows what a specific field or topic they want to pursue? If I do not know which exact field I want to pursue, should I be honest on my application or still pick a field that most interests me at the time of application? And Wenfei answered, if you are unsure, then I would definitely go broad instead of choosing a specific field for the purpose of the application. You may want to tailor it to the university, but it's completely okay to be broad in your interests. Great answer. So with that, I believe we're out of time. Let's please thank our panelists for their generosity, for their time and experience.